The governor declared a state of emergency. Russian telegram channels described dozens of powerful explosions ringing out across the city. Locals filmed the horizon glowing orange and posted it from their balconies. And in the port, something Russia had promised could never happen was happening in real time. The fleet that had run from Sevastopol to escape. Ukrainian drones was now being hit in the port it ran to. The safest harbor Russia had left in the entire Black Sea, the last address on a shrinking list of places the Black Sea fleet could hide, was not safe anymore. On the night of March 1st to 2nd, 2026, Ukraine launched the largest drone attack on Novorossiysk in the entire history of this war. Approximately 200 attack drones, aerial and maritime, working together. They came at night, low and fast. And by the time Russian air defenses understood the full scale of what was arriving, it was already too late. When dawn broke over the port, the damage told the story. 5 Russian warships hit, 3 Russian sailors dead, 14 to 16 wounded. 6 out of 7 oil-loading arms at Russia's most important Black Sea crude export terminal on fire. An S-300 radar destroyed. A Panzer S-2 air defense system gone. And sitting wounded at her berth, the frigate Admiral Essen, a carrier of 8 caliber cruise missiles used to strike Ukrainian cities, with a fire burning on her deck that would not go out for 18 hours. 18 hours. A warship of the Russian Black Sea fleet was on fire for 18 hours, and nobody could put it out because the damage went deeper than the surface. And 1 month later, before the Admiral Essen could even be assessed for recovery, Ukraine came back, this time with FP-2 strike drones, targeting the Admiral Makarov, Russia's last operational Caliber-capable frigate remaining in the Black Sea. The frigate fired air defense missiles in self-defense. The drones hit anyway. In the space of 5 weeks, Ukraine had systematically targeted both of the Black Sea fleet's surviving Caliber-armed frigates in the same port, in the same bay, Russia had chosen as its sanctuary. And through it all, one question burned louder than the oil. Terminal on the horizon. How did Ukraine reach a port 200 to 350 nautical miles from its own territory? A port surrounded by S-300 systems and Panzer batteries with 200 drones and walk straight through? The answer to that question is not just about this one night. It is about a 3-year campaign that turned the Black Sea into something Russia never anticipated. A proving ground for warfare without warships, where the side with no navy has systematically dismantled the side that had one of the largest fleets in the region. To understand why Novorossiysk burned that night, you need to understand the road that led there, every step of it, because it is a road built on innovation, desperation, and a refusal to accept what every military analyst said was the fixed reality of this war at sea. Go back to the first hours of Russia's full-scale invasion in February 2022. Ukraine had one significant surface warship, a Soviet-era frigate. It was scuttled in the port of Mykolaiv within days to prevent it falling into Russian hands. The Black Sea Fleet, headquartered in Sevastopol and occupied Crimea, was the dominant force in the region. It had missile cruisers, frigates, landing ships, submarines, and minesweepers. It had the infrastructure of decades. Russia's admirals looked at Ukraine's empty naval order of battle and saw nothing to worry about. They were wrong in a way that will be studied in military academies for generations. Starting from spring 2022, Ukrainian engineers, many of them working outside of any traditional military structure in improvised development teams funded by Ukraine's intelligence services, began building the world's first combat-deployed unmanned surface vessel at operational scale, the Magura, a maritime autonomous guard, unmanned robotic apparatus, roughly 5.5 to 6 meters long, built from carbon fiber with a low-profile V-shaped hull that sits barely half a meter above the waterline. Almost invisible on radar, minimal thermal signature, capable of hitting 42 knots, range exceeding 400 nautical miles, carrying a payload of explosives triggered by impact fuses extending from the bow. Cost? Between $250,000 and $300,000 per unit. Ukraine could manufacture up to 50 per month. On October 19, 2022, 6 to 8 of these drones entered Sevastopol harbor at 4 in the morning. They hit the fleet's flagship, the frigate Admiral Makarov, and damaged a minesweeper. A naval analyst called it a turning point in naval strategy, but it was only the beginning. In February 2024, Magura V-5s became the first naval drones in history to sink an enemy warship in combat, destroying the missile corvette Ivanovets and the tank landing ship Cesar Kunikov. In May 2023, 3 Magura drones attacked the Russian intelligence collection ship Ivan Kurs, 140 kilometers northeast of the Bosphorus, demonstrating a range that Russian naval planners had not believed possible. The patrol ship Sergei Kotov was attacked in August 2023, damaged, then attacked again in March 2024, and sunk. Within the first year of becoming publicly known, Magura V-5s had struck 18 Russian vessels and caused an estimated $500 million in damages to the fleet. The Magura V-5 evolved into the Magura V-7, 7.5 meters long, ranged to 800 nautical miles, armed with AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles modified for surface-to-air operation. In May 2025, 2 Russian Su-30SM fighter jets, each worth roughly $50 million, were shot down over the Black Sea by Magura VK-7 drones. Fighter jets shot down by something that looks like an oversized speedboat. Alongside the Magura, Ukraine's security service built the Sea Baby, heavier, carrying warheads of up to 850 kilograms, designed to destroy stationary targets. Sea Baby drones attacked the Kerch Bridge, were adapted to deploy naval mines, and sank additional ships. In December 2025, Ukraine struck a Kilo-class submarine docked in Novorossiysk harbor itself, using a sub-Sea Baby underwater drone that traveled beneath the port's own surface and hit the vessel from below. A submarine at its own berth in Russia's most protected harbor, damaged by an underwater machine. The ambition and reach of Ukraine's maritime campaign kept expanding in every direction. Together, this arsenal achieved something that defied every pre-war prediction. By the time Ukraine launched its massive March 2026 attack, the Black Sea Fleet had lost or seriously damaged more than a third of its inventory. The flagship cruiser Moskva, once the most powerful surface warship in the Black Sea, had been sunk by Neptune anti-ship missiles in April 2022. Landing ships, patrol vessels, missile corvettes, minesweepers, submarines, all hit, all destroyed or damaged, all by a country that in February 2022 had officially no functioning navy. Russia's response to this campaign was textbook military thinking applied to a non-textbook problem. It retreated. When the drone and missile attacks on Sevastopol made the port too dangerous, the fleet relocated to Novorossiysk on Russia's own Black Sea coastline. Novorossiysk is 200 to 350 nautical miles from Ukrainian-held territory. It sits in a mountainous inlet, topography that provides natural radar clutter. It was surrounded by S-300 and S-400 air defense batteries. It had Panzer S-2 close-range point defense systems, and it was 400 kilometers from the nearest Ukrainian-controlled land. Russia's naval commanders believed the distance and the defenses made. Novorossiysk untouchable. It became the Black Sea Fleet's last refuge. All the surviving caliber-capable frigates, the remaining corvettes, the submarines that now submerged at their own berths rather than patrol at sea because even leaving the port had become too dangerous. The protective harbor walls of Novorossiysk had become, as one defense analyst put it, a cage. That cage had one fatal vulnerability. A cage only holds what cannot fly over its walls. And Ukraine had spent 3 years learning to fly very, very far. The Novorossiysk attack of March 1st to 2nd, 2026 was not improvised. It was the product of months of preparation. Preparation that visible in what happened before the 200 drones ever left the ground. Ukraine had been probing Novorossiysk's defenses repeatedly. Previous confirmed strikes on the port had taken place on November 14th and 29th of 2025, on February 7th, and on the night of March 1st itself. Each strike was a probe. Each probe revealed more about how Russia had layered its defenses, where the S-300 radars were positioned, where the Panzer systems covered, which angles of approach offered the best coverage gaps. By the time 200 drones launched on the night of March 1st, Ukraine's intelligence picture of Novorossiysk's defenses was detailed enough to design an attack around its weaknesses, rather than against its strengths. The scale of 200 drones in a single operation is not accidental. It reflects a specific tactical logic Ukraine had been refining since its first large-scale swarm operations. Russian air defense systems, even sophisticated ones like the S-300 PMU-2 and the Panzer S-2, have a finite engagement capacity. They can track a certain number of targets simultaneously and fire a certain number of missiles per minute. Saturate those systems beyond their engagement envelope, and they break down mathematically. Not because they malfunction, but because there are more threats in the air than they have missiles and tracking channels to handle. Ukraine had done the math. The saturation threshold for Novorossiysk's layered defense was somewhere above what previous smaller strikes had tested. 200 drones crossed that threshold. The governor of Krasnodar region, the Russian region containing Novorossiysk, confirmed the strike was devastating enough to declare a state of emergency. He described it as the strongest strike on Novorossiysk of the entire war. Russia's defense ministry reported shooting down 172 Ukrainian drones across all regions that night. But 172 drones shot down still means that dozens reached their targets, and the targets those drones reached inside the port were chosen with precision. This was not a random swarm looking for anything to hit. The drones flew in from the seaward side, approaching along vectors specifically chosen to avoid the strongest sectors of ground-based radar coverage. They hit warships, they hit air defense radars, they hit the Shishkari's oil terminal, and they did all of this simultaneously, forcing Russian defenders to prioritize between targets rather than being able to address all of them. The results, confirmed by satellite imagery analyzed by OSINT teams Cyber Boroshno, Exilenova Plus, and Harbuz in the days after the strike, were extensive. The frigate Admiral Essen, one of Russia's 2 surviving Caliber-armed frigates in the Black Sea, was confirmed hit in her central superstructure. The strike detonated the ship's own countermeasure systems. The grenade, launchers that deploy thermal decoys and radio signal scatterers. It damaged the TK-25 electronic warfare complex, the ZR-90 target illumination radars, and the main frigate M2M surveillance radar that serves as the ship's primary eyes in battle. The SBU source who confirmed the strike said it bluntly: the ship sustained critical damage, significantly limiting the use of its Caliber cruise missiles. The frigate cannot currently strike Ukrainian territory. A fire burned on the deck for 18 hours. Not a small fire, not a containable blaze. 18 hours of burning aboard a warship crewed by Russian sailors who had believed their port was protected. The minesweeper Valentin Pikul, a Project 266M vessel, was confirmed hit at the stern with damage to its trawling equipment. The trawling equipment is the mechanism that makes a minesweeper. Without it, the ship cannot perform its primary function. 2 anti-submarine corvettes, the Yeysk and the Kazimov, both Project 1124M Albatross-class vessels, were also struck. Beyond the warships, 6 of the 7 oil loading arms at the Sheskari's oil terminal were damaged. Sheskari's is not a peripheral facility. It is the endpoint of Russia's state pipeline company Transneft's Black Sea export infrastructure, handling an estimated 20% of Russia's total crude oil exports. Oil from Russia, from Kazakhstan through the Caspian Pipeline Consortium, and from Siberia. 6 loading arms out of 7 were damaged. Reuters, citing trade sources, confirmed that oil loadings were suspended after the attack. Every hour those loading arms stayed out of operation cost Russia money it was already running short of. And then there was the air defense damage. A 30 N6E2 guidance radar from an S-300 PMU-2 favorite system, the radar that directs the missiles of Russia's premier long-range air defense complex, was confirmed destroyed. A Panzer S-2 system was eliminated. Russia's air defense bubble over Novorossiysk Bay, the bubble that was supposed to make this port unreachable, had been systematically punctured. The radar that watches the sky was destroyed. The close-range system that kills incoming threats was gone. And the SBU confirmed that its units had penetrated that bubble intentionally, that breaching Novorossiysk's layered air defenses was not a fortunate side effect of the attack, but a designed component of it. The strategic significance of what hit the Admiral Essen in March became fully visible 1 month later when Ukraine returned. On the night of April 5th to 6th, 2026, a large-scale Ukrainian drone attack hit Novorossiysk again, this time reportedly involving more than 50 drones, in what appeared to be Ukraine's most ambitious and damaging strike on the port's oil infrastructure to date. And among the primary targets was a warship, not the Admiral Essen this time. She had been so damaged in March that by April, OSINT analysts noted the March strike had already affected her air defense missile system and surveillance radar so severely that she was unlikely to be able to effectively defend against incoming drones. This time, the target was the Admiral Makarov. The Admiral Makarov carries up to 8 Kaliber cruise missiles in a universal shipborne firing system. The 3 S-14 vertical launch tubes are positioned at the forward section of the ship, just ahead of the main gun mount. The drone hits recorded in satellite imagery from the April 6th strike landed near those launch tubes and at the ship's bow. A source within the SBU confirmed to the Kiev Post that the ship sustained critical damage to its superstructure and Caliber launch systems. USF Commander Robert Brovdy announced the strike publicly on Telegram, confirming that the frigate had fired air defense missiles to defend herself. They failed. The FP-1 and FP-2 strike drones manufactured by Firepoint flew in, absorbed the incoming defensive fire, and hit the ship anyway. Defense Express stated it plainly. The Admiral Makarov was Russia's last operational Kaliber-capable frigate in the Black Sea. The Admiral Grigorovich had not been seen in the Black Sea since 2021. It had transited out before Turkey closed the Bosphorus to Russian warships in 2022. With the Admiral Essen critically damaged in March and the Admiral Makarov now struck in April, Russia had effectively lost both of its Caliber-armed surface combatants in Novorossiysk within the space of 5 weeks. What does that mean in concrete terms? Caliber cruise missiles are Russia's primary precision long-range naval strike weapon. They are what Russia fires from warships at Ukrainian cities, infrastructure, power stations, and population centers. The frigates in Novorossiysk did not need to leave port to launch those missiles. The ships could fire from their berths, their missiles arcing hundreds of kilometers across Ukrainian territory. Every time the Ukrainian air defense network lit up with incoming naval cruise missiles, those frigates were the source. By striking both of them in quick succession, Ukraine did not just damage 2 ships. It removed the naval caliber launch platform from the equation. That is a direct consequence measured in Ukrainian lives. In Ukrainian apartment buildings still standing, in Ukrainian power stations still operational because the missiles that would have hit them are still inside damaged launchers in a Russian port where there are no repair facilities large enough to fix them. Turkey closed the Bosphorus to Russian warships in 2022. There is no way to bring in replacement vessels. There is no way to move the damaged frigates to a proper shipyard. Whatever damage Ukraine inflicted that night in March and again in April is permanent, not recoverable, not reversible. The Black Sea Fleet does not get those caliber launches back. This irreversibility is the most underappreciated dimension of Ukraine's entire naval campaign. Novorossiysk has no major ship repair facilities. The Bosphorus is closed. The ships cannot leave, and the repair capabilities cannot come in. Russia's naval commanders understood this when they chose Novorossiysk as the fleet's refuge in 2022. They accepted the trade-off of limited repair capabilities for the presumed safety of distance and air defense coverage. Ukraine's campaign has now eliminated the presumed safety, while the limited repair capability remains. Every hit on every ship in Novorossiysk is a hit that cannot be undone. Not with money, not with orders, not with the best engineers in Russia's naval arsenal. The damage compounds, the fleet shrinks, the number of ships capable of meaningful military operations approaches 0. The Shishkari's terminal adds another layer. Before the war, Novorossiysk handled roughly 25 to 35% of Russia's crude exports, approximately 3 to 3.2 million tons per month. Even during wartime, it had continued to function as a major export hub. The Caspian Pipeline Consortium that runs through this terminal includes U.S. energy giant Chevron as a shareholder, a fact that had previously led Washington to issue Ukraine a formal démarche after an earlier strike on November 25, 2025, warning Kiev to avoid targets that affected American economic interests. Ukraine struck Shishkari's again in March 2026 anyway, and again in April 2026. Oil loadings were suspended. Crude that was supposed to leave those 7 loading arms sat in tanks while Russia's budget deficit grew wider, and Sweden's military intelligence noted publicly that Moscow was understating its deficit by $30 billion to deceive Western allies about the true state of its economy. The drone that closed those loading arms did not cost $4 million, it did not cost $1 million. Ukraine's domestically produced strike drones are a fraction of the revenue Russia loses every day. Those loading arms remain offline. The cost math? The same equation Ukraine has been reversing on land with Shaheds versus Patriot missiles with cheap drones versus expensive intercepts applies with equal force at sea. The equation has always been the same. Find the assets Russia cannot replace, cannot repair, cannot recover from losing. Strike them. Strike them again. Strike them until the accumulation of damage becomes more than the Russian military machine can absorb. That strategy brought Ukraine from a scuttled frigate in Mykolaiv in February 2022 to 200 drones over Novorossiysk in March 2026. It brought Ukraine from a port with no navy to a position where the naval analyst community is asking not whether the Black Sea Fleet will survive, but how much of it is left. Joint satellite analysis by Cyber Boroshno and Exilanova found probable damage to 6 Russian warships in the immediate aftermath of the March 2nd strike. 6 in a single night. In a port Russia had declared its safest harbor. The Azov Sea is now a Ukrainian lake. The Black Sea shipping corridors that Russia blockaded in 2022 are now open, kept open by Ukrainian drone escorts and insurance partnerships with Lloyd's of London. Russia's Black Sea Fleet has been reduced from an operational force to a collection of wounded ships sheltering behind harbor walls it can no longer trust. Naval News called it clearly. Novorossiysk is turning into a trap. The fleet retreated there to escape the threat. The threat followed it. Now it has no more harbors to retreat to. Sochi is too small. Okhotskaya in Georgia is too limited. The Bosphorus is closed. The fleet sits in Novorossiysk, and it cannot move, cannot be repaired, and cannot be reinforced. Ukraine's drones come when they want, from vectors Russia cannot fully predict, in numbers that overwhelm whatever air defense coverage remains after each strike eliminates more of it. And the air defense coverage has been getting thinner with every operation. The S-300 PMU-2 guidance radar destroyed in March cannot be replaced from inside the port. The Pantsir S-2 eliminated in the same strike cannot be quickly driven in from elsewhere. These are complex systems that require planning, positioning, and crew training to operate effectively. Every time Ukraine hits a radar or a missile system in Novorossiysk, the coverage bubble shrinks a little more, and a smaller bubble means the next 200 drones need to penetrate less. The mathematics compound in Ukraine's favor and against Russia's with every successive operation. This is not an accident. It is a designed attrition of Russia's defensive architecture around its last port. Systematic, patient, and executed in a sequence that makes tactical sense only if you understand the end state being aimed at. Consider also what the submarines are doing. The Russian Black Sea Fleet's remaining improved Kilo-class submarines are still based in Novorossiysk. They are not patrolling. They are submerging at their berths, sitting on the harbor bottom during drone attack windows to reduce their visibility and radar cross-section. Think carefully about what that means. Submarines designed to prowl the deep sea, designed to operate covertly at range, are hiding from drones by sitting still in their own harbor. They have effectively ceased to function as submarines and become expensive metal objects resting on the seafloor of a Russian port. And even that camouflage failed in December 2025 when Ukraine's subsea baby underwater drone found and struck a Kilo-class submarine at its berth at the seafloor of Novorossiysk harbor, demonstrating that the submarine's last defense, invisibility at depth, was no longer reliable either. The situation described by Naval News is worth reading slowly. The Ukrainians, using expendable uncrewed platforms, only have to get lucky once, but the Russian sailors must succeed against every single incoming threat. That is not an exaggeration. That is the mathematics of asymmetric warfare applied to a closed harbor with no exit. And Ukraine has been winning those mathematics for 3 years, across every theater of this war, with weapons built in improvised workshops by engineers who were told the task was impossible. On the night of March 1st to 2nd, 2026, 200 drones crossed 200 to 350 nautical miles of open Black Sea. They penetrated the most heavily defended port Russia had left. They hit 5 warships, destroyed air defense radars, burned 6 loading arms at a terminal that handles a fifth of Russia's crude exports, killed 3 Russian sailors, and left the Black Sea Fleet's flagship Caliber carrier burning for 18 hours. Then, 1 month later, they came back for the last one. The frigate fired air defense missiles. The drones hit anyway. Novorossiysk was defenseless. Not because Russia stopped trying to defend it, but because Ukraine had already spent months dismantling the defenses, one radar, one Pantsir, one probing strike at a time, until the night came when 200 drones arrived and the math of saturation did the rest. Russia has nowhere left to retreat to. Ukraine has not stopped looking. And the fleet that was supposed to dominate the Black Sea, strangle Ukraine's ports, and project Russian power across the entire region is now a collection of damaged warships sitting in a harbor that burns every time Ukraine decides it should burn. Step back and look at the full arc one more time. February 2022, Russia's Black Sea Fleet is the dominant naval force in the region. Ukraine has 1 warship, then none. April 2022, Ukraine sinks the fleet's cruiser flagship with missiles it built themselves. October 2022, the first sea drones enter Sevastopol harbor at 4 in the morning. 2024, those same drones sink warships in open water. May 2025, naval drones shoot down fighter jets over the Black Sea. December 2025, an underwater drone finds and damages a submarine on the floor of Novorossiysk harbor. March 2026, 200 drones in a single night hit 5 warships, destroy air defense systems, and to leave a Kaliber frigate burning for 18 hours in Russia's last safe port. April 2026, the second frigate, Russia's final Kaliber-capable surface combatant in the Black Sea, is hit in the same port, its launch system damaged, its future uncertain. 4 years. No navy. And the Russian Black Sea Fleet is a shell of what it once was, permanently confined, unable to be repaired, and facing a threat it cannot outrun because the threat is already inside. What happens to the remnants of Russia's Black Sea Fleet now? Can a navy that cannot be repaired, cannot be reinforced, and cannot leave its last port continue to function as a military force at all? Or has Ukraine's relentless campaign already decided the answer? And the fleet just hasn't finished sinking yet? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to PPR Global and turn on notifications to stay updated on our analyses. Thank you for choosing us.